Hey, what's up, YouTube? So we're only a couple days away from the 2018 NBA draft. It's an exciting time for the NBA as a whole. And what I'll be doing now is I'll be doing a two-part NBA mock draft for this upcoming draft, where the first part, this video right here, will be picks 1 through 14 or the lottery picks. And then the second part will be picks 16 through 30. I will not be doing second round. I will not be doing trades for my mock draft. So that's just for information for you guys right there. And so, without further ado, let's just get right into this thing. With the first pick in the 2018 NBA draft, the Phoenix Suns are on the clock. And while there are certainly a lot of needs for the Suns to address, they've been really rebuilding for a long time now. Haven't really made the playoffs in like 7, 8 years, something like that. It's been a long time since the Steve Nash days where they were one of the best teams in the NBA. And really, they have needs all over the place, but it doesn't really matter what the needs are. With the first pick, they have to go with the best player available in the draft. And for me, that has to be DeAndre Ayton, center out of Arizona. Now, when you look at DeAndre Ayton, obviously, in my opinion, he's the best player in the draft. You can make a case for Luka Doncic or maybe Mo Bamba, who has maybe the highest ceiling out of all these players in the draft. But with DeAndre Ayton, he's got an elite combination of size, strength, and athleticism. At 7 feet tall, 250 pounds of pure muscle, he's ready to handle the physicality of the NBA right away. And really, when you see him run in the open court, he runs like a gazelle, really. He's just so athletic for a guy of his size. It's really unnatural to see someone of his size just be able to move like that. And where you can really see his impact come is on the boards. He averaged 11.6 rebounds per game last season. He really was a man amongst boys in the Pac-12 conference overall. And really what sets him apart from the other prospects in this draft class is his offensive skill set, where he's really a perfect fit for the modern NBA game. He can step outside in the pick and pop game. He can really shoot it. He's got a great mid-range touch, but he's also shown that he can shoot from outside as well from three-point range, shooting 34% from three-point range in his only season at Arizona. He plays well with his back to the basket. He's got a lot of moves down there. Particularly, he loves to face up and shoot a lot of mid-range jump shots from 10 to 15 feet away from the basket. He's very good at that. He's also very capable at passing out of double teams as well. A very well-rounded offensive force when it comes to his skill set, translating to the next level. Now, in terms of weaknesses, his defense is still an issue. He just doesn't really have the great amount of awareness and instincts yet to really be a defensive force. Some of that had to do with the fact that he's playing a lot of power forward at Arizona, really playing out of position where he should have been more of a center, around the basket a lot more. And he's not the most natural shot blocker, even though he has really good size. He's got really good athleticism. He's got really good length and a 7'5" wingspan. He just doesn't have those instincts that you want. And really, in today's modern NBA game, you need your centers to be rim protectors, and he's just not that at this point. But with that said, the way he fits with the Phoenix Suns right now, where you have Devin Booker and Josh Jackson as your two kind of guys to build around on the perimeter, the Phoenix Suns are obviously not really sold on Dragan Bender or Marquise Chris, who both have kind of regressed to a degree in their 2 seasons in the NBA. They haven't really progressed the way they kind of want them to. DeAndre Ayton, he can step in right away and be a dominant force offensively while he's still developing his threat, his ability to play the defensive side of the ball. But he's going to fit right alongside Devin Booker and Josh Jackson. And, yeah, he's for me, he's the best player in the draft. He's got a supremely high upside, and he's also got a pretty high floor as well, where I think he's at least going to be a solid contributor for you, just with the fact that he's so good offensively, he's so big and athletic. He's about as safe as he can get. And Arizona, with him playing at Arizona, he's right in the backyard of Phoenix, so they got to know a lot about him. It's kind of, it just fits. It seems like a perfect fit to me. So that's where I'm going for the Suns. DeAndre Ayton, he's the first overall pick in the draft. Now, moving on to the second pick in the NBA draft, the Sacramento Kings are on the clock. And really, when you look at the Kings here, again, they've been a team where they've been struggling for such a long time. They need a franchise-changing force to really help this team out. They drafted De'Aaron Fox last season. It looks like he might be a good point guard to build around for the future. They have some young pieces on the perimeter when you look at Buddy Hield. Bogdan Bogdanovic had a really nice rookie year last year. And he also got some big guys like Skal Labissière, who have really shown that they have some upside to kind of build around. So there's really no immediate need when you look at a giant gaping hole in terms of young players to build around for this roster, but they just need to add the best player available, I think, at this spot. And with that said, Luka Doncic, he has to be the pick for me from Real Madrid. When you look at Luka Doncic, he's been the best. He's the best European prospect that has come along in the NBA draft in years. He led his team to a EuroLeague title this past season. He was the EuroBasket Final Four MVP. And he's been playing professionally since he's been 13 years old, and he's been dominating the last couple seasons over there in Europe. And he's just doing all this stuff as a teenager, which is just so incredible. In his last game in the Spanish League Championship, he scored about 20 points, I believe. Just unheard of for a player of his age going up against grown men. You're just never going to see that really in the Euro League in terms of that kind of skill set right away. When we look at Doncic as a prospect, he's got to be the most versatile offensive player in this draft because really he's best set as a point guard, but his size at 6'7", he can play maybe even small forward and even power forward in some small ball lineups. He can play both with and without the ball. He's a really good shooter. He's got a nice looking stroke. Even though his percentages weren't the best, he's got a nice looking stroke where I feel like that will translate to the NBA level once he kind of figures out his range of the NBA three-point line. But really, when you look at Doncic, he is best used as a playmaker for others, especially in the pick and roll. He's got elite sense of how to manipulate the pick and roll. He does a fantastic job of finding the weak side shooters to give them wide open shots in the corner. So you've seen that quite a bit where he'll manipulate the defense and just fire a bullet to the opposite side of the court for a wide open three. It happens all the time. He's just elite when it comes to picking his spots in terms of the offense. And he's also versatile in that he can post up on smaller players as well. He's got a really nice post fadeaway look. He can spin off his man quite a bit. He's just got elite instincts and awareness on both sides of the court. Very smart player overall. And I feel like he's got a very high floor where he's going to be a very safe player for the Sacramento Kings, who really they've been rebuilding for such a long time. They need a safe pick here to make sure that they know that they can pan out and be a guy that they can at least have on their roster and be a solid contributor for their team. Now, when Doncic, he's not the most elite or explosive athlete. It's kind of a weakness in his game. It limits his defensive upside. And I really don't think he's going to be able to match up in one-on-one situations against elite playmakers. So really, he's not going to be at his best in terms of guarding. He's not going to guard the best player on the other team. That's a fact. It's just something you're going to have to kind of work around for all these NBA teams. And he's also not his best in terms of the offensive side, creating for his own shot in one-on-one situations. It's just because of that athleticism, and he's just not able to create as much separations as you would like to in terms of being a number one go-to scorer. So that kind of limits his upside there. But when you look at his fit with the Sacramento Kings, like I said, they already have some nice guards in De'Aaron Fox, but he healed Bogdanovic. But I think you can complement them really well as either the on-ball ball handler in terms of being their point guard, or playing off the ball, maybe playing a 3 or small ball 4 that can make plays or spot up. He can do a variety of different things in the offense. And when you look at the front office of the Sacramento Kings, Vlade Divac, he runs the organization over there for the Kings front office, and he has a lot of connections with Europe, obviously. So I think it just makes a lot of sense for the Kings to go in that direction. And I think it's a pretty safe pick overall for the Kings. So I like Doncic going to the Kings with the second overall pick in the NBA draft. Now moving on to the third pick in the 2018 NBA draft, the Atlanta Hawks are on the clock. And, man, they've been really just – they were in mediocrity for such a long time where they were making the playoffs every year, but they weren't really making any noise. And now they're kind of rebuilding this entire thing, kind of retooling the roster a bit. And there's needs all over the place, really. Dennis Schroeder, who's really been their best player over the past couple seasons, it looks like he's going to be traded at some point, or they're really not committed to him long term as a point guard. Just a lot of different directions that they can go. And I think they just have to go with the player that has the biggest upside at this point. And for me, it's got to be Mo Bamba, center out of Texas. And when you look at Mo Bamba, obviously the biggest thing that jumps off the screen for him is the fact that he's 7 feet tall with a 7'10" wingspan. Absolutely ridiculous length and size for the position. He's Rudy Gobert, but with the jump shot, which is actually even more impressive because he combines that great, ridiculous length and agility for his size where he can be able to move his feet with guards and switches. He averaged 3.7 blocks per game last season in his only season at Texas. So the defensive upside is ridiculously high, but he's also has some offensive upside as well because even though he only shot 27% from 3 in his only year at Texas, he has a nice-looking stroke, and it's been said that he's been really improving it this offseason, really trying to show the NBA teams that can be something that he can use in his repertoire as he moves forward to the NBA. I think he's got a lot of upside on both sides of the floor, but defensively, he might be the best player in this draft because, man, he's just such a dominant rim protector. And the fact that he can guard guards off of switches and pick-and-roll situations, it just makes him such a valuable defensive weapon, I think. Now, in terms of the weaknesses, he's got a slender frame. He needs to add a lot of muscle. And early on in his career, he's going to get pushed around quite a bit. It's going to take him a bit of a time to really adjust to the NBA. And in terms of his upside, he's not going to be a guy that's going to be a go-to scoring option necessarily. He's more of a guy that's going to be a pick-and-roll type guy where you can throw him a lot of lobs at the rim, and more of a pick-and-pop type of player where you can, hit him for the 3-point line if you can develop that shot eventually. So you're going to need to get an elite point guard or elite creator to complement him at some point to really bring out the most in his game. But how he fits with the Hawks is the Hawks, they really are a team in transition where they don't really have any building blocks on their team overall. And they have the opportunity to get the best player available and get the guy with the most upside, in my opinion, is in this entire draft. And while Mo Bamba can be a risk because of his slender frame, he also has the highest upside for all the players available, in my opinion. So I think it's a nice pick for the Hawks. They need a guy that they can kind of build around for the next couple of 10 to 15 years as a defensive anchor for their team. Moving on to number 4 pick in the NBA draft, the Memphis Grizzlies are on the clock. And, man, this is just a tough season for them last year. They've been in the playoffs over every single year, I think, for the past 6-7 years. Just one of the most consistent teams in the NBA. And last year, they just kind of fell off the cliff a little bit. Marc Gasol, Mike Conley, they battled some injuries. They fired their coach midway through the year. Just was not a great season for the Grizzlies. So with this pick, they really need to do a good job of really setting the bar in terms of rebuilding their team for the future. And I think the best player on the board to really help with that would be Marvin Bagley, power forward / center out of Duke. When you look at Marvin Bagley, he's a dominant rebounder with high offensive upside. He averaged 21.2 points per game and 11.3 rebounds per game in his only season at Duke. Shot a very efficient 61%. Most of his buckets were in the paint off of easy dump-off passes and rebounds, putbacks, a lot of putbacks. It was really his bread and butter at Duke. And he's really there's really no better second jumper than Bagley in this draft. When you look at, going up, getting the rebound, and then going up quickly to finish the play, there's no one better at that than Bagley in this entire draft. And in terms of the offensive upside that he provides, he's got a nice looking form on his jump shot. And he really showed last year with a 39% 3-point percentage that he does have some ability to shoot from outside. He may not be the most natural player at that yet, but the upside is definitely there. I think if you can kind of work with him on that a little bit, he could be a very nice shooter at the next level in terms of being a pick-and-pop guy or eventually being a guy that can spot up at some points from the outside. And then he combines that skill set with a very nice athletic frame and a really good motor. This guy runs the floor better than any big in the draft, and he will always have consistent production, I feel like, just for the fact that he's always going to play hard on the rebounding glass, always going to look to get easy buckets and transition for you. He can just do a lot of variety of things there, and you combine that with his upside. He makes it a pretty safe pick for the Grizzlies overall. Now, he's not the best defensive player in the world. In fact, he's more of a defensive liability than anything. He's not a threat as a shot blocker whatsoever. He's kind of got average length. He doesn't really have the instincts and awareness that you want from your center or power forward on that side of the floor. And it was really alarming that Duke had to resort to a 2-3 zone midway through the year to kind of cover up his defensive flaws because he just couldn't switch on the guard to pick and roll situations, and he wasn't doing a good job of helping weak side. So those are definitely some concerns for the Grizzlies overall. But how he fits with the Grizzlies here is, the Grizzlies, they need to commit to a full-on rebuild at this point. Gasol, he's getting older, and he needs a replacement at some point. And Bagley, he kind of has the highest upside at this point in the draft for all the big guys available. He can step in and be a backup to Gasol or really even complement Gasol in the starting lineup with the eventual intent of taking over Gasol's place at the center position and being a player that the Grizzlies can build around going forward into the future. Now, moving on to number 5, the Dallas Mavericks are now on the clock. And the Dallas, man, they are clearly in rebuild mode. They are building around Dennis Smith Jr., Dirk Nowitzki. He doesn't really have many years left in his career. And Mark Cuban has said that he wants to get to the playoffs at least one more time for Dirk before he ends up retiring. So with this pick, the Dallas Mavericks need to get somebody that not only can be a building block for the future with high upside, but also be a guy that can contribute right away to help them really make a push for the playoffs going into next season because Dirk does not have a lot of time left. And with that said, I think the best player for them at this spot would be Jaren Jackson, center out of Michigan State. And he would fit extremely well with the Mavericks right now because he can perfectly complement Dirk on the defensive side of the ball because Dirk, man, he cannot play defense at all at this point in his career, and that's exactly what Jaren Jackson provides. He's very versatile on the defensive side of the floor where he's still raw in some aspects of his game. He had a lot of fouls at Michigan State. That really was a big issue for him. But he's an elite shot blocker with 5.5 blocks per 40 minutes, which was just ridiculous. And he's got the movement skills and agility to switch onto guards with ease. Just a very high upside on that side of the floor. And you combine that with his 6'11 frame. He's got decent strength, not the best strength. He has to add a little bit more weight onto his frame if he's going to be an elite post defender. But all the tools are right there to be an elite defensive playmaker at the next level. And what really makes Jaren Jackson an intriguing prospect for me is he's got a lot of versatility and a lot of upside on the offensive side as well, because even though he's got an unorthodox form where he kind of shoots it from the hip a little bit, he shot 39.6% from three last year on quite a bit of attempts. So even though he's still raw on that side of the floor, he's not going to be able to create his own shot at this point in his development. He has the tools to be a really nice stretch 4 or a stretch 5 going into the NBA. And he fits, like I said, he fits really well with Dallas because they're in the middle of a rebuild. They need a defensive big to kind of build around. They have guys like Dennis Smith Jr. at the point guard spot who can kind of be their main ball handler and scorer. He can help set up Jaren Jackson on the offensive side of the ball. And meanwhile, while he's doing that, he can help out Dirk on the defensive side of the ball with his defense, ability to switch, ability to block shots at the rim. He can just do a lot of different things for this Mavericks team going into the next season and building towards the future. So I really like that pick for the Mavericks going forward. Moving on to number 6, the Orlando Magic are on the clock. And really when it comes down to the Magic, I think their biggest need is the point guard position. They traded Elfrid Payton to the Suns midway through the season last year, who really just did not pan out for them. They have some guys like Aaron Gordon on the wing where they can kind of build around there. Nikola Vucevic is still there at the center position. So they needed a point guard, I think, to really help put them over the top into the Eastern Conference, because at this point, they got to stop rebuilding at this point. They've been rebuilding for such a long time since the Dwight Howard trade. They need someone that can step in right away and help this team make a playoff run and really help this young core start to develop and really make sure that they can kind of, kick into gear a little bit. They've been kind of going, stuck in the same spot for way too long. So with that said, I think they should go with a guy like Trae Young, point guard out of Oklahoma. And while this might be a bit of a reach in terms of the talent perspective, he's a little bit of a risk overall. The Magic desperately need a point guard to kind of help this organization really take the next step. And Young, even though he's a big risk, he's a boomer bust player in my eyes. He's the biggest boomer bust player. He's got a really high upside though. And the Magic, they really need to take a chance with a guy with high upside to kind of turn this thing around. And what Young will bring to the table right away is he's an elite shooter with fantastic playmaking skills, which is very underrated in my opinion. He's a fantastic passer, manipulates the pick and roll game very well. Does a really nice job of moving the ball up the floor in transition, finding guys in the open floor. He's got great vision, great passing skills, great accuracy on his passes. He's just a fantastic playmaker. You combine that with his ability to stretch the floor with the shooting aspect of the game. Just a lot of upside to his offensive game. There's no better offensive prospect in this class than Trae Young. But there are some question marks, I think, when you look at Trae Young as a prospect. His size and willingness to defend will definitely be an issue, I think. And the question really comes down to the fact that can his offense make up for the fact that his defense will not be good at the next level? And when you got guys like Jonathan Isaac, Aaron Gordon, guys that are really long and very agile defenders that can play multiple positions in terms of the defensive side of the ball, I think with the Magic here, they have a situation here where they can kind of make up for that lack of defense from Trae Young, because Jonathan Isaac and Aaron Gordon, they're versatile defensive players that can really help cover up for his flaws on that side of the floor. They need someone that can help score the ball, can help facilitate the offense a little bit, and that's what Trae Young provides for this team. Moving on to number 7, my Chicago Bulls are on the clock here, and they talk about needs. They need needs everywhere. Other than Lauri Markkanen at the power forward position, honestly, they can go any direction here. They can go safe here. They can go with the guy that can be a center for them. Wendell Carter Jr. is still on the board. They can go point guard here because I'm not really sold on Chris Dunn. They can go wing here because, let's face it, Zach LaVine, he's going into a contract year. I'm not really sold on him either. So there's a lot of needs for the Bulls right now. But at this point, I feel like the Bulls are going to go someone with the highest upside. And for me, that player with the highest upside at this point is going to be Michael Porter Jr., small forward, power forward out of Missouri. And while Porter, he's made it known that he wants to be a Bull. He was the only guy. The Bulls were the only team where he sent his medical information to. But that also leads to the biggest risk when you look at Michael Porter Jr. is he had back surgery early on in his freshman year at Missouri, which really took away from his entire freshman season. Makes him a huge risk because you don't know with back injuries how it's going to kind of affect his health going forward into his career. But with Michael Porter Jr., it's undeniable that he has elite offensive upside to be a great scorer at the next level. He's 6'10", he's got a great shooting touch, and he has the ability to make a lot of difficult shots on the move, off the dribble, on pull-up shots, on fadeaway shots in the post. as a catch and shoot threat. He's got a lot of offensive ability. And while he's not the best defensive player at this point, and he just needs to get his health up there, I'm not really sure whether he's the most toughest guy around, on whether he can make guys better in terms of being a facilitator at this point. The Bulls need wing scoring, and Porter fits well next to Markkanen as either a small forward at the 3 position or as a small ball forward where Markkanen can kind of shift to the 5 spot. That's really where I think his value will be best served, maybe as a 4, because he's got really good length, I think, as well. So Michael Porter, I think he fits pretty well there with the Chicago Bulls at the number 7 spot. Moving on to number 8, the Cleveland Cavaliers are now on the clock. And when it comes to the Cavaliers, they need to address either their defense or their secondary scoring threat if LeBron chooses to stay, which I think is unlikely. But if you're Cleveland Cavaliers, you have to do everything you can to make sure that LeBron wants to stay with you, because the draft is before free agency. You want to get as much high-profile playmakers as possible to help out LeBron. And I think a guy like Colin Sexton out of Alabama, point guard out of Alabama, is a guy that can really help out with both issues on the defensive side of the ball and in terms of being another scoring option to help out LeBron if he does stay. I'm not as high on Sexton as others are in terms of his overall ability and upside in this draft, but he provides the Cavaliers much needed scoring on the offensive side of the ball. He's a very aggressive, getting to the rim, scoring from the mid-range area. He's not the greatest shooter yet, but he can definitely create his own shot. And he's also a very competitive defensive player where he's not afraid to get up into you defensively and really be a pest on that side of the floor, which the Cavaliers absolutely need. Their defense was absolutely atrocious last season. Now, I do question his ability as a playmaker, whether he makes players better, and whether he can just be a guy that you want to be comfortable with being your point guard of the future. But he definitely does have some upside to at least be a guy that can be add some scoring punch to this team while playing some really tough defense for this team going forward. And if LeBron leaves, he definitely has the athleticism and upside to be a guy that the Cavaliers can potentially build around going forward. So moving on to number 9, the New York Knicks are on the clock. And for me, it comes down to wing depth. They drafted a point guard last season in Frank Ntilikina. I think he's a guy that you have to give some time for him to develop a little bit. They also brought in Moutier from the Denver Nuggets. So, again, they have a lot of point guards on this roster that they can kind of give some time to kind of build off of and see if they can develop as prospects to kind of build around Porzingis. So what they really needed here was to get some wing depth here, maybe some scoring, maybe some better defense, whatever the case is. I think the player that best fits the bill for them is Mikal Bridges, small forward from Villanova. And while he doesn't have a ton of upside, he is by far maybe the safest pick in the entire draft. He's a guy, in my eyes, that will be guaranteed to be at least a contributor. He's definitely one of the best, if not the best, 3-and-D player in the entire draft, and he will certainly be one of the better 3-and-D players in the entire league. The Knicks, they desperately need wing depth, and they should really use this pick to give some Ntilikina some time to develop as a point guard, because he's got elite defensive ability. And when you look at the fact that Ntilikina combined with Bridges, combined with Porzingis, the Knicks could potentially have a very dominant defense to build around going into the future, because all 3 of those guys can absolutely defend at the next level. So I think that'll be a really smart pick for the Knicks going forward. Mikal Bridges, he's not the sexiest pick necessarily. He doesn't have the most ridiculous upside of any of the prospects left on the board, but he's definitely a safe guy that the Knicks could feel confident that he will be able to contribute at the NBA level. So moving on to number 10, the Philadelphia Sixers. 76ers are on the board. And when you look at the 76ers, they're a team that they already had their 2 building blocks in Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. And the 76ers, they love versatile players who can play multiple positions. And I think the guy that best fits that mold will be Miles Bridges, small forward, power forward, whatever you want to call him, out of Michigan State. Now, while Bridges, he's an interesting prospect because he really doesn't have any position, but he can shoot, he can slash the rim, he runs the floor pretty well, and he's got very good size and athleticism at 6'10", 6'7". He's really bulked up. He really moves well in the open court. He's not great defensively as of yet, but there is potential there to be potentially a very good defensive player with a lot of versatility. And when you put him next to Simmons and Embiid as a versatile scoring threat, the offense will be running through Simmons and Embiid primarily. So getting a guy with his versatility and ability to score without the ball in his hands, I think would be very beneficial, I think, for the 76ers going forward. Moving on to number 11, the Charlotte Hornets are on the clock. And when you look at the Hornets here, they're a team that they're just stuck in mediocrity at this point. They paid a lot of money to Nicholas Batum, who hasn't really panned out since he got extended. Michael K. Gilchrist really hasn't panned out, so you can really go with the wing here potentially. But They also have a weakness at the big guy spot because even though they have Dwight Howard in the fold, man, I mean, he's getting older, so you're going to need someone to eventually replace him at this point. And I think the best player available for them at this point in the draft would be Wendell Carter Jr., center out of Duke. I think this would be a huge steal for the Hornets overall. Carter offers a different type of big man than Cody Zeller or Dwight Howard because he's got a lot of great skills bringing him to the table, who can step away from the basket as well as post up and just be a versatile offensive player. He's also a very nice passer with a very high basketball IQ overall. The only reason I have him dropping this far in the draft is because his lack of foot speed really makes him a liability in the pick and roll game, which has been such a huge part of the NBA over the past few seasons, where we've seen a lot of teams, especially in the Eastern Conference Finals, Western Conference Finals, and the NBA Finals. A lot of the big time teams nowadays will just keep on doing pick and rolls until they switch to the guy that they want to expose one-on-one and to get the match that they want. And I just feel that Wendell Carter Jr., he's not the type of guy that will be able to cover guys or guard some guards around the perimeter because he just doesn't have that foot speed. And he's also not the best rim protector as well. He doesn't have that elite athleticism to really be that I think will really translate to the NBA level. But even though he doesn't really have a super high upside, he's got a really high floor, really comparable to Luka Doncic and Mikal Bridges in terms of the fact that you're going to get at least a quality contributor to your team, and that's what Wendell Carter Jr. can provide to the Hornets. I feel like he's got a starter upside. I think he's very comparable to a guy like Al Horford, where he can do a lot of different things on the offensive side and the defensive side of the ball. So I really like that pick for the Hornets there. Moving on to the number 12 spot, the Los Angeles Clippers are on the clock, and they're in a nice situation where they have back-to-back picks at 12 and 13, so they can address two different type of needs for them. And when you look at the Clippers, they're just starting their rebuild, so really they can go in any position really at this point. And I think they're going to go with the guy here in Robert Williams, center out of Texas A&M, a guy with really high upside. And he would be a perfect replacement for DeAndre Jordan, who's been on the trade block for quite a while, I think, for the Clippers over the past couple of seasons. Williams brings a lot of great size at 7 feet tall and athleticism to be a rebounding and shot blocking specialist at the next level. Very similar, like I said, to DeAndre Jordan. And he would be a perfect target for lobs at the NBA level if you can get a guard in there that can really help make him better at the next level. He's also got a lot more offensive upside than DeAndre Jordan because he also has some experience being more of a playmaker on the offensive side in terms of being a nice passer at the high post level. So Robert Williams, I think he would be a nice fit in terms of being a backup for DeAndre Jordan for a couple seasons. And then when they end up eventually trading DeAndre Jordan away to another contending team, he can step right in there and be kind of a similar type of player. Moving on to number 13, the Clippers are on the clock again. And I think they're going to address the guard position with this pick, going with Lonnie Walker, shooting guard out of Miami. When you look at Walker, he's an extremely athletic shooting guard who can finish at the rim, and he should be a good shooter in time. He's got very nice mechanics on his shot. But really what stands out for Walker are the physical traits where he's just very athletic. He's got good strength for his size and position. He's only 6'5", so he's not the biggest type of guy in the world at the shooting guard spot, but I think he's got the physical traits to be a very good defensive player. He just needs to show more consistency. And that's really the only reason why he's dropping so far in the draft is when you look at the talent level is really, really high. He's got extremely high upside. He just wasn't very consistent in his only year at Miami. So that's really the only question mark, I think, for him. But he's a high upside player who I think can eventually take over for Lou Williams eventually, who's going to be on the Clippers for a couple more years on that low contract where he's getting paid about $8 million per year for the next 3 years. He'd be a kind of guy that can kind of learn from Lou Williams and then eventually take his spot and be a starting shooting guard of the future for this team. And then moving to the last pick of the lottery, the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets, man, they're so close to being a playoff team. They have a superstar in Nikola Jokic. Murray showed to be a pretty good player last season. Jamal Murray showed to be a pretty good point guard for them as a primary ball handler on this team. They have needs all over the place, but I think they're going to go with another point guard here, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander out of Kentucky. This is a player that rose up draft boards late in the season with some very impressive play. He's got great length to guard multiple positions at the next level where he can guard point guards. And once he does add some strength to his frame, I think he's got great upside to be a very nice wing defender as well because he's 6'6" with a 7-foot wingspan. Those are ridiculous measurements for a point guard. I really love the way he plays the game where he's very unselfish. He can play either as a backup to Jamal Murray or play alongside Jamal Murray where he can create for Jamal Murray off the dribble, or he can be a spot-up threat when Jamal Murray wants to take over on the offensive side of the ball. like I said, he adds much needed defensive value to this team because that was one of the weak spots for the Denver Nuggets last season and why they did not make the playoffs. They just weren't good enough on the defensive side of the ball. And Gilgeous-Alexander, with time, I think he's going to be an elite defensive playmaker at the next level. So that's my mock draft for part one through the lottery picks. Stick around for part two coming up next. Thanks, guys, for watching.